Everybody's so afraid to run against you that they don't. We're on the Republican side. What do they have?
Oh, well,
Like 6 candidates on that side? I mean, you even got the Grizzly Mama running over there. I mean, man.
Well, I don't think it comes down to that. I mean, I expect to go out and ask my party for the nomination just the same as those 6 or 7 are doing. So I'm not taking anything for granted, but it's certainly good to no, I never have.
I learned that about you. Remember when we ran unopposed once and we're knocking on every door in the district, and I'm like, Pam, can't we just go to McLeod and have fun?
When I think when you want to serve the people, you ask for their support.
Yeah, well, you're right. Okay. You were right then and you're right now. Let's talk a little bit about that, because I saw what happened with your fundraising, and it got the attention of a lot of my Republican friends. They didn't think that you would raise that amount of money prior to the end of the year filing. What clicked? What made it so that people said, by God, I'm going to get behind her and actually do it with my checkbook?
Well, I think all of this is about, do people see you as a person who could be a leader? Is it somebody that they could see going to Washington and speaking on behalf of North Dakota, standing up for North Dakotans, fighting for North Dakotans? And so, obviously we went out and we did a lot of events. People called and offered to host events for us, fundraising, which was always so helpful. And we were all over the state. And I think it's more of a reflection than anything else.
How big of a liability is it to run in what traditionally has been a red state? The last time this state voted for a Democratic president, Lyndon Johnson was running. And you've got a Democratic president running now that every poll indicates is not very popular in North Dakota. How big of a liability is that for you?
It may be a liability. I mean, for me, I just talk about the issues important to North Dakota. We know what the challenges are in front of us. You just were on the phone with the emergency manager. So much of what the solutions are going to be for Fargo, Minot, and even to some extent Bismarck, certainly Valley City, Devil's Lake, comes through a partnership with the federal government. So you need somebody who knows the issues, who's been out on the ground, has been working with those local and community leaders, and then can take that message to Washington, D.C. And that's how I plan to approach it.
You have some experience. I mean, you worked with Byron Dorgan, but let me be more specific about what I'm getting at with President Obama. He made a tough decision on the Keystone Pipeline project that wasn't very popular with Republican and Democrat alike. Speak to that. If it had been United States Congresswoman Pam Gulleson, what would have your advice been to President Obama?
Right. It's a decision that I don't agree with. I think that he should have approved the Keystone Pipeline so that we could get moving on it. The State Department has had the application for 3.5 years, I believe, and there's been a lot of questions, but there's been a lot of work to put things in place. I think we're at the point where we need to move forward on that. And to me, it fits into, it's about the bigger picture of our national energy policy and how we're going to prepare ourselves so that we can move away from foreign sources of oil. One part of it is the internal infrastructure. Now, this happens to be Canadian oil, I understand that, moving through to refineries to the south. But we do have an off-ramp in Montana that will be able to handle about 100,000 barrels a day of North Dakota Bakken oil, which is really important. But for me, it's just one piece of it. I also think, and you and I have been big proponents of this, along with a number of legislators, I think we should be building refineries, more refinery capacity right here in North Dakota. I think that should be a priority of the state legislature and some of these other groups that want to help support really adding value to our oil here. I think that's the longer term solution, but I think this is one piece of it. So I've supported the Keystone, and I would, obviously, if I'm elected, you communicate that to the president and to the administration, just as obviously as Heidi's done.
The pushback that I got from listeners when Senator Hoeven really took the mantle for the Republican Party of criticizing President Obama on the Keystone Pipeline project was twofold. It was, one, they agree with him on the pipeline, and they did, both Democrat and Republican alike. Two, he got slapped around a little bit from the listeners, both Republican and Democrat alike, because they want a refinery built, and in his capacity as governor, they don't really feel that he provided leadership towards moving towards that. And I don't know if you're getting the same type of response by your email that I'm getting.
I've always felt like the state of North Dakota missed a tremendous opportunity here. The study that was done on the refinery basically pointed towards the fact that it would be a good solution for North Dakota, depending upon what kind of product that you put into it. So I think that the governor and the Department of Commerce, this was an opportunity to put a team together that really looked at increasing not only the capacities of the existing refinery, but also looking at other options. So certainly I hear it. I hear it all the time. People say, why aren't we doing to protect and to add value to our own oil, and not always looking at somebody else to find the solution, as is the case here with this Trans-Canada pipeline.
Westbound I-94, there's a crash on the Minnesota side between 8th and 20th Street. Traffic is moving very slow, but it is moving through. So just know that if you're westbound I-94 on the Minnesota side here, that's the type of road conditions we have. Just give yourself some extra time and know you're going to be coming upon that. Pam, I want to go to, and so much has been made of the Keystone Pipeline project, you knew we were going to have to talk about that first. But overall, I mean, you as Chief of Staff for former United States Senator Byron Dorgan have had to deal with a wealth of issues, from veterans issues to Social Security issues to Medicare and Medicaid issues to, when I look at this, the biggest issue that's really facing us in the next coming Congress is one of government involvement. And let me be specific on that. I don't think that people should have to apologize for a strong farm program. And yet, if you look at many of the people that are lining up to run against you, I'm fearful that they could care less if the sugar program goes by the wayside, or they could care less if crop insurance goes by the wayside. And what are you hearing as you're going from town hall to town hall?
Well, obviously, I think most people, when they think about government in their lives, my philosophy is one that we should have effective government, but it's up to the leaders to require that. You have to have good oversight. And limited government. I mean, that's the old, Thomas Jefferson, Teddy Roosevelt approach to government, is that, make it the kind of government that works for the people, but have it limited. And make sure that it has to be, that those people who have oversight hold it accountable. And so that's what I hear. I mean, we are a state that's, as much as we don't always want to admit it, we have a lot of government in our lives. About 40% of our economy is based on agriculture. A strong farm bill with a strong disaster program has been critical for us. It certainly has allowed us to be able to stem a number of really tough years in farm country. We wouldn't be at the place we are with our economy today if we didn't have that. On the same note, as we look at all of the serious flooding that has affected our state for a number of years now, again, the infusion of federal support has been critical. Sometimes we think it hasn't been enough. Certainly FEMA gets criticized very often for being a little slow-footed. Maybe they didn't bring and circle all of the resources directly to these projects as they should have. But ultimately, when we're talking $700+ million in last year's flood cycle coming to the state, that's a lot of federal involvement. So it's always about finding that balance. And government can overreach, and when they do, you have to push them back.
Let me go to a place in terms of questioning here that is really kind of interesting ground for me in this race, because you can make that argument to the North Dakota people, and there's a lot of people in pickups and trucks right now you caught nodding their heads saying, well, I agree with her on that. I don't care what letter she has behind her name, I agree with her. That made common sense to me. But you're going to have people in the non-traditional ways run against you from the pulpit in certain churches who are going to criticize you, wink, wink, nod, nod on Sundays. You're going to have people who say that my friend who's never introduced or voted for legislation in any way hinder gun ownership is about taking away your guns. I mean, how do you counter that when people will flat out lie? at times about you.
You know, you were talking about the presidential race a little bit earlier, and you know, one of the stories that didn't get a lot of coverage this week was when John Huntsman left the presidential race. And I thought one of the things that he said was just so true. He said how disappointed he was in the fact that people aren't talking about the really important issues. Instead, these races have deteriorated to a lot of finger-pointing, partisanship, personal attacks. And that is the downside of politics. You know that even stepping forward and running takes a pretty considerable act of courage, because you know you hold yourself open to a lot of things that are true and untrue. In the cases that you talked about, say gun ownership and that, I mean, I have an A+ rating with the NRA as a legislator. Very strong. You and I have, I'm sure, very similar. Active in the local sportsmen's groups, supportive, obviously we're a farming, ranching family, so we allow...
You need to shoot a coyote every now and then. I mean, let's just be honest. You do.